The truck exploded 30 meters ahead, a bloom of orange fire that turned the twilight sky into day. Claire Morgan's camera hit the dirt as the shockwave slammed into her chest, tearing the breath from her lungs. Dust and debris rained down like hail. She reached for her radio. Dead air. No extraction team. No backup frequency. The city they'd told her was cleared suddenly felt like a trap with walls closing in. Then a voice crackled through the static, low, American, worn like old leather. "If you run that direction, you'll be dead in 3 minutes." She froze, heart hammering against her ribs. Who is this? Someone who's been here longer than you. The city of Al Ramia looked like God had given up halfway through creating it. Buildings sagged into the street like exhausted soldiers, their walls pockmarked with bullet holes and RPG scars. Rebar jutted from concrete like broken bones. Everything was the color of sand and old blood. Claire Morgan adjusted her press vest and checked her gear for the third time. Camera, spare batteries, water, notebook, satellite phone. The same ritual she'd performed in 6 countries over 4 years. It never got easier. Fear didn't fade with experience. It just got more familiar. "You sure about this?" Corporal Mike Hendricks stood beside the Humvee, M4 carbine held at low ready. He was 23, maybe 24, young enough that his face still held the belief that following orders would keep him alive. "This whole sector's been quiet for 2 weeks, but quiet don't mean safe. That's exactly why I'm here." Claire shouldered her camera bag. "Everyone's covering the front lines. Nobody's asking what happens after." Hendricks glanced at the ruins, then back at her. "After what?" "After we leave," she started walking. "After the cameras go home and the budgets dry up. What happens to the people we promised to protect?" He didn't answer. He just followed because that's what corporals did. The civilian quarter had been a marketplace once. You could still see the bones of it, overturned stalls, shredded awnings, the geometric patterns of tiles buried under rubble. A few locals remained, elderly men sitting in doorways, women in black watching from windows, like ghosts haunting their own lives. Claire raised her camera and started filming. The light was perfect, golden hour painting everything in amber and shadow, beautiful and broken. "Miss Morgan," Hendricks touched her elbow, "we should keep moving. Captain wants us back before dark." 5 more minutes. "That's what you said 10 minutes ago." She lowered the camera and met his eyes. "When's the last time anyone told their story? When's the last time someone with a microphone asked what they needed?" Hendricks shifted his weight. "Ma'am, with respect, that ain't our mission." "I know." She turned back to the ruins. "It's mine." The old man's name was Rashid. He sat on a wooden chair that looked older than him, which meant it had survived at least 3 different wars. His hands were gnarled like tree roots, and when he spoke, his Arabic came slow and deliberate. Claire's translator, a thin man named Kareem, crouched beside her. "He says the Americans came 7 years ago. They promised schools, jobs, clean water." "And?" Claire asked. Kareem listened, then replied, "He says they got walls, checkpoints, a list of people who disappeared." Claire filmed Rashid's face as he spoke. Every wrinkle was a story. Every scar was a date on a calendar. "He wants to know," Kareem continued, "if you are here to make more promises." "No," Claire said quietly. "I'm here to document what the last ones cost." Rashid studied her for a long moment, then nodded. He reached into his robe and pulled out a photograph, faded, creased, edges worn soft from handling. It showed a young man in a police uniform, smiling, standing in front of a building that no longer existed. "His son," Kareem translated, "trained by American advisors, killed by men who said he was a traitor for working with foreigners." Claire took the photo carefully, like it was made of glass. "Can I film this?" Rashid nodded. She framed the shot, the photograph in his weathered hands, the ruins behind him, the dust hanging in the air like unfinished sentences. This was the story, not the firefights or the tactical maps, the human cost, measured in fathers who outlived their sons. Hendricks appeared in her peripheral vision, tapping his watch. "I need to wrap up," she told Kareem. The old man spoke again urgently. "He says," Kareem translated slowly, "that you should leave before dark. He says the quiet is not peace. It is waiting." They were halfway back to the checkpoint when Claire heard it, a sound like distant thunder, but the sky was clear. She stopped walking. What was that? Hendricks had his rifle up, scanning rooftops. Mortar, maybe 2 clicks out. "I thought this sector was cleared." It was. His jaw tightened. 3 days ago. The radio on his vest crackled. "All units, Checkpoint Bravo is taking contact. Heavy small arms, possible RPG. Say again, Checkpoint Bravo is taking contact." The transmission dissolved into static and gunfire. Hendricks keyed his mic. "Bravo, this is Vanguard 2. What's your status? Bravo, respond." Nothing. Claire felt the ground shift under her feet, not physically, but in the way reality does when the script changes. "What does that mean?" "It means we need to move, now." Hendricks grabbed her arm and started pulling her toward the Humvee. They'd made it maybe 50 meters when the first round cracked past her head. Claire didn't hear the shot, just the supersonic snap of the bullet cutting air. Hendricks slammed her down behind a concrete barrier as automatic fire chewed into the wall above them. "Contact right! Contact right!" he was shouting into his radio, returning fire in controlled bursts. Brass casings clinked on the pavement. Claire pressed herself flat, heart trying to break out of her chest. This was supposed to be safe. They'd told her it was safe. More gunfire, closer now. Hendricks burned through a magazine, slammed in a fresh one. "We can't stay here. On my mark, you run for the vehicle." An explosion cut him off. Not close, but not far enough. The Humvee they'd arrived in was now a burning shell, black smoke boiling into the sky. Hendricks stared at it, then keyed his mic. "Vanguard 2 to any station. We are dismounted, under fire, grid November Tango 4728, requesting immediate QRF." The radio squawked back, but it wasn't a response. It was orders. "All Vanguard elements, withdraw to Rally Point Hawk. I say again, all elements withdraw to Rally Point Hawk. ROE has changed. You are weapons free but do not pursue. Extract and regroup." Hendricks stared at the radio like it had just spoken in tongues. "What about us?" Silence. "Vanguard 2 requesting extract instructions." "Negative, Vanguard 2. No assets available. Break contact and move to Rally Point Hawk on foot. You are 3 clicks north. Acknowledge." Hendricks looked at Claire, then at the burning Humvee, then at the maze of ruins around them. 3 kilometers, through a city that had just woken up angry. "Acknowledged," he said flatly. They moved fast, staying low, using the walls like a spine. Claire's camera bag slammed against her hip with every step, but she didn't drop it. It was evidence, proof. The only thing that made this nightmare mean something. Hendricks led, rifle scanning corners, every movement trained and automatic. Claire followed, trying to remember to breathe, trying not to think about the bullet that had missed her head by inches. The shooting behind them faded, but the city itself seemed to tighten. Shadows moved in windows. Doors that had been open were now closed. The civilians had vanished like smoke. "Why did they leave us?" Claire gasped. "Orders." Hendricks didn't slow down. "Probably got something bigger happening. They'll send someone once they can." "You believe that?" He didn't answer. They cut through an alley choked with garbage and spent shell casings. The smell was overwhelming, rot and cordite and human waste. Claire's boot caught on something soft. She didn't look down. "Hold!" Hendricks raised a fist. They froze. Ahead, the alley opened onto a street. Hendricks edged forward, checked the corner, then pulled back fast. He held up 2 fingers, pointed to his eyes, then made a slashing motion across his throat. Two hostiles, armed. He gestured, "Stay here." Claire nodded, pressing herself against the wall. Her lungs burned, her hands shook. She'd been in war zones before, but always with a convoy, always with protocols, always with the illusion of control. This was different. This was being prey. Hendricks moved like a ghost, rifle tucked tight, every step deliberate. He reached the corner, waited 2 heartbeats, then swung out. 3 shots, sharp, precise. 2 bodies hit the ground. "Move," he hissed. They sprinted across the street, into another alley, deeper into the labyrinth. Claire's lungs burned, her vision tunneled. She focused on Hendricks' back, on keeping her feet moving, on not thinking about the fact that she couldn't hear any friendly voices on the radio anymore. They'd been moving for 20 minutes when Hendricks' radio finally crackled to life. "All elements be advised. Rally Point Hawk is compromised. I say again, Rally Point Hawk is compromised. All units withdraw to FOB Sentinel. Extract birds inbound in 15 mics." Hendricks stopped cold. FOB Sentinel is 8 clicks west. Claire didn't know what that meant in real terms, but she understood the tone. It meant they weren't going to make it. Vanguard 2 requesting alternate extract. Negative. All birds committed to Hawk evac. You are to move west and link up with... Static. Hendricks keyed the mic again. "Say again, you are breaking up." Nothing. He tried again. And again. The radio was dead weight on his vest now. "Battery?" Claire asked. "No." He tapped the antenna. "Jammed. Or the relay tower's down." He scanned the rooftops, the windows, the 1,000 places a shooter could hide. "We need to find hard cover, somewhere we can sit tight until they get comms back." That's when Claire heard it. The distant whine of an engine. Not American, something older, rougher. A technical maybe, or a salvage Soviet-era truck mounted with a PKM. Hendricks heard it too. "Move! Now!" They ran. The building was 3 stories, half collapsed, but it still had bones. Hendricks cleared the ground floor with practiced efficiency, then waved Claire inside. They climbed the stairs, boards creaking underfoot, plaster dust falling like snow. 2nd floor. Hendricks found a room with 2 exits and a window overlooking the street. Tactically sound, defensible. Claire collapsed against the wall, chest heaving. "How long do we wait?" "Until someone comes looking." He checked his ammunition. 4 magazines left. "Or until they stop." She wanted to ask what happened if neither of those things occurred, but she already knew the answer. Outside, the engine sound grew closer, then stopped. Hendricks moved to the window, staying low, using the wall for cover. Truck. Armed. 4, maybe 5 dismounts. He watched, silent, counting. They're searching buildings. Claire's stomach dropped. "For us?" "For anyone." He pulled back from the window. "We stay quiet, we stay still. They'll move on." But they didn't. Minutes crawled past. Claire could hear voices now, harsh and fast, the cadence of men who were hunting. Boots on pavement, metal scraping metal. Then from somewhere impossibly close, a voice spoke in accented English. "We know you are here, American. The radio we took from your friends told us everything." Hendricks' face went stone. The voice continued, almost conversational. "You can come out, or we can come in. Either way, we will find you. And the woman with the camera, she will make a fine prize." Claire's breath stopped. Hendricks raised his rifle toward the door, finger on the trigger, waiting for the first shape to appear so he could send them to hell. That's when the radio on his vest crackled, not with static, but with a voice. American, older, rough as gravel. "Don't fire." Hendricks froze. "Who is this?" he whispered into the mic. "Someone who's been here longer than you." The voice paused. "Northeast corner of the room you're in. There's a hole in the wall behind the cabinet. It leads to a crawl space. Move now. They're coming up the stairs. Claire looked at Hendricks. He looked at the northeast corner. How do I know you're... You don't, the voice hardened. But in 10 seconds you'll hear boots on the stairs, and in 30 seconds you'll be dead. Your call, Corporal. Hendricks stared at the radio, then at the cabinet. Boots echoed in the stairwell. Go, he hissed to Claire. They shoved the cabinet aside. There was a hole, barely wide enough to crawl through, darkness beyond. Claire didn't think, she just moved. The crawl space was suffocating, tight, hot, reeking of mold and something dead. Claire wormed forward on her elbows, Hendricks right behind her, his breathing harsh and fast. Behind them, muffled by plaster and stone, she heard the searchers enter the room, shouting, furniture being overturned, a gunshot into the floor, testing for hidden spaces. The voice on the radio whispered, "Keep moving. 30 meters ahead, there's a junction. Go right." Hendricks didn't respond, but he followed the instruction. They crawled. Claire's knees screamed. Her hands scraped on broken brick. The darkness was absolute, but she didn't dare use a light. Finally, the crawl space widened. She tumbled out into a basement, gasping, covered in dust and spider webs. Hendricks landed beside her, rifle up, sweeping for threats. A single battery-powered lantern clicked on. The man holding it was 60, maybe older, lean and weathered, with a gray beard and eyes that looked like they'd been carved from granite. He wore faded multicam fatigues, no insignia, and a plate carrier that had seen better decades. A suppressed M4 leaned against the wall beside him. "Corporal Hendricks," the man said, reading the name tape. "And you must be the journalist." Claire found her voice. "Who are you?" "Jack Harlan." He said it like it was a name from a gravestone. "And as of right now, you're both under my protection, whether you like it or not." Hendricks kept his rifle trained on the man. "You got 30 seconds to explain why I shouldn't put you down as an unlawful combatant." Jack smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Because, son, I'm the only reason you're not bleeding out on that floor upstairs. And because, according to your command, I don't exist." "What?" "I've been off the books for 6 years. Jack stood slowly, hands visible. "They declared me KIA after an op went bad. Told my family I died. Told the army I was a loss." He tapped his chest. "But I stayed. Couldn't leave. Not after what I saw." Claire's journalist instincts kicked in through the adrenaline. "What did you see?" Jack's eyes locked on hers. "The truth they didn't want in the reports." Hendricks didn't lower his rifle. "You expect me to believe the army just forgot about you?" "Not forgot." Jack pulled a canteen from his vest and offered it to Claire. She took it, hands still shaking, and drank. The water tasted like metal and salvation. "Erased. There's a difference." "Bullshit." Hendricks shifted his stance. "Every KIA gets processed. Dental records, DNA, personal effects. You don't just disappear. You do if the operation you died on never officially happened." Jack's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. "November 2019. We were running interdiction on a weapons convoy. Intel said it was insurgent supply lines. Turned out to be something else." Claire lowered the canteen. "What?" Jack met her eyes. "US-made weapons. Crates with DoD serial numbers. Being sold to the same people we were supposed to be fighting." The basement went silent except for distant gunfire, muted by concrete and earth. Hendricks finally lowered his rifle, just slightly. "That's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation, it's what I saw." Jack sat down on an overturned crate, moving like a man whose body had been broken and badly repaired. "My team radioed it in, requested guidance, got back a fire mission instead, on our position." "Jesus," Claire whispered. "3 of us survived the initial strike. They hunted down the other 2 within a week." Jack's jaw tightened. "I went dark, stayed dark, because the moment I surface, I'm a loose end that needs tying." Hendricks processed this, his face unreadable. Young, but not stupid. If that's true, why help us? Because you're about to become loose ends too. Jack stood and moved to a makeshift table, plywood on cinder blocks. A tactical map was spread across it, marked with grease pencil. Your command just abandoned you in a hot zone. You think that's incompetence? Could be redeployment. It's not, Jack tapped the map. 2 hours ago, a convoy moved through this sector. Unmarked trucks, no IFF transponders. They dropped cargo in 3 locations, then disappeared. 30 minutes later, the attack started. Claire felt ice in her stomach. You're saying someone armed them? Recently. I'm saying someone wants this city to stay unstable. And journalists asking questions? He looked at Claire. That's bad for business. Hendricks shook his head. You're talking about a conspiracy that would involve multiple levels of command. I'm talking about money. Jack's voice went hard. Billions in contracts that only exist as long as the war keeps going. You know how many private security firms operate in this region? How many logistics companies? How many consultants billing the government $300 an hour? Claire's camera bag suddenly felt heavier. You have proof? I have 6 years of surveillance, documentation, and pattern analysis. Jack gestured to a duffel bag in the corner. All worthless if I can't get it to someone who'll actually publish it. He looked at Claire. That's why you helped us, she said quietly. You need me. I need your reach, your credibility. Jack's eyes were hard, honest. I've got the truth. You've got the platform. Question is, are you willing to bet your life on it? Before Claire could answer, the radio on Hendricks' vest crackled. Not the tactical frequency, but a secondary channel, barely audible through static. Any station, this is Vanguard 6 Actual, emergency broadcast. Rally Point Hawk has fallen. FOB Sentinel under sustained attack. All personnel are directed to E&E protocols. Extraction timeline unknown. Good luck. Vanguard 6 Actual, out. The transmission cut. Hendricks stared at the radio like it had just announced the end of the world. Jack said quietly, Still think they're coming back for you? There are others, Jack said, watching Hendricks absorb the reality of abandonment. 6 of us still operating in this region. Former SOF, contractors, even one agency guy who got burned on a black op. We stay off-grid, share intel, keep each other alive. Claire pulled out her notebook, a habit so ingrained she did it without thinking. How do you survive? Supplies, ammunition, medical? Cash sites left over from the surge, dead drops, and sometimes, Jack smiled grimly, we take what we need from people who shouldn't have it in the first place. Hendricks finally holstered his sidearm, a gesture of reluctant trust. Those tunnels we crawled through, you built those? Improved them. This city's foundation is Ottoman era. 100-year-old smuggling routes, cisterns, escape passages. We mapped what we could, reinforced what we needed. Jack moved to a wall hung with what looked like a hand-drawn map. Intricate, detailed, marked with symbols Claire didn't recognize. We can move through most of the old quarter without surfacing. Most? Hendricks asked. The southern sectors collapsed in 3 places, and the northern exits are under surveillance. Jack traced a route with his finger. But I can get you to the edge of the city. After that, you're in open desert. 7 clicks to the nearest coalition checkpoint. 7 clicks in hostile territory with no support. Hendricks did the math in his head. At night, maybe, thermal signatures would make us visible, but at least we'd have concealment from— You're not going tonight, Jack interrupted. Why not? Because they're expecting it. Jack pointed to another part of the map. They've got patrols set up along every logical exfil route. They're not stupid. They know how the Army trains you to think. Claire watched the 2 men, military minds analyzing angles, calculating odds. So what do? Jack looked at her. We wait. Let them think you're pinned down or dead. Then when they pull back to defend against the coalition counterattack, and there will be one, they can't leave a FOB under siege. We moved during the chaos. How long? Hendricks asked. 36 hours, maybe 48. We don't have that much water. Jack kicked the duffel bag at his feet. I've been rationing for 6 years, Corporal. I think I can handle 3 people for 2 days. Hendricks studied the older man, and Claire saw something shift in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Respect. You were a ranger. It wasn't a question. Jack's face stayed neutral. Long time ago. Bat Boys or Scroll? Hendricks pressed. The old Ranger rivalry, 75th Regiment versus the original units. 2nd Battalion. Jack's voice carried the weight of identity before they mothballed it and reformed the structure. You? 3rd Bat, 2nd Platoon. Something passed between them. Tribal acknowledgement. The invisible handshake of men who'd earned the same scroll. Hendricks finally relaxed, just slightly. All right, Sergeant Harlan. Just Jack. Lost the rank when I lost the pulse. Jack, what's the play? Jack moved to the duffel bag and pulled out 2 bottles of water and an MRE that was probably older than Hendricks. First, you eat, then you rest. I'll take first watch. When the sun sets, I'll brief you on the exfil route, contingencies, rally points. He glanced at Claire. And we'll talk about what happens to your footage. Claire's hand instinctively went to her camera bag. It comes with me. Not arguing, Jack tossed her the MRE. But if we get compromised, that becomes a liability. People die protecting data. I need to know you understand that. She met his eyes. I've been in Aleppo, Mosul, Kabul. I know the cost. Those were wars with rules. Reporters were theoretically protected. Jack's expression darkened. This is a cover-up, and you just became a witness. 2 hours later, Claire sat with her back against cold stone, watching Jack work. He moved with the efficiency of a man who'd done this 1,000 times, checking gear, loading magazines, cleaning weapons with a rag that had probably been white once. Hendricks was on the other side of the basement, trying to coax life out of his radio. Static and ghosts. How do you do it? Claire asked quietly. Jack didn't look up from the rifle he was field stripping. Do what? Stay here, knowing you're erased, knowing no one's coming. His hands paused just for a moment. You don't stay for the people who forgot you. You stay for the ones who can't leave. He resumed working, barrel rods sliding through the chamber. Every convoy I interdict, that's weapons not reaching a market square. Every cache I burn, that's IEDs not buried in a road. Maybe I can't win, but I can make losing cost them something. That's not survival, Claire said. That's penance. Jack looked at her then, really looked, and she saw the truth in his eyes. Maybe it's both. The radio crackled, not Hendricks' frequency, but something else. Jack's head snapped up. He crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed a handheld from his own pack, pressing it to his ear. A voice distorted and broken. Reaper to Ghost 7, net check. Jack keyed the mic twice. Click, click. No voice, just acknowledgement. Activity spike in your sector. At least 2 search teams, possibly hunters. They're broadcasting on open channels trying to flush someone out. Civilian woman, press credentials. You copy? Jack glanced at Claire, then keyed the mic. Copy. I have the package. Figured you might. They're offering bounty. 10,000 US for her, 20 for proof of death. You need extract? Negative. Holding for window. Window's shrinking, brother. Sat imagery shows reinforcements moving in from the east. If you're gonna move, do it soon. Acknowledged. Ghost 7 out. Jack lowered the radio. Hendricks was staring at him. Bounty? Claire's voice sounded distant to her own ears. They want me that badly? Not you specifically. Jack checked his watch. They want what you filmed, what you know, and they're willing to pay local militia to make sure it never leaves this city. Hendricks stood. Then we move now, before they tighten the perimeter. Too risky. They're expecting panic. They're also expecting us to sit still and die. Hendricks' voice rose. Every hour we wait is an hour they get stronger. You said it yourself. Reinforcements are coming. Jack said nothing. He just watched the younger man burn through his options, his training, his hope. Watched him arrive at the conclusion that soldiers always hate. There are no good choices, only different flavors of bad. What would you do? Hendricks finally asked. Jack looked at Claire, at the camera bag she hadn't let go of since the first explosion, at the notebook peeking out of her vest pocket, filled with interviews and observations and truth. I'd make them pay for every inch, he said quietly, but I'd get the story out first. Claire understood. You want me to transmit the footage before we run. If you die in the desert, it dies with you. If you get captured, they'll destroy it. Jack pulled a satellite uplink from his duffel. Civilian model, older but functional. You upload now, encrypt it, send it to your editor. Then the data's safe. You're just a witness. They'll still hunt me. Yeah, Jack met her eyes. But at least it'll matter. Hendricks looked between them. How long for an upload? Claire did the math. 40 minutes, maybe an hour depending on bandwidth. That's 40 minutes we're stationary, broadcasting a signal. Hendricks shook his head. They'll triangulate us. Then we move after the upload completes. Jack started packing the duffel. I know a route they won't expect. Risky, but fast. Define risky. We'll be crossing through an active patrol sector. No cover, just speed and luck. Hendricks laughed, sharp, bitter. Rangers don't do luck. No, Jack agreed, but ghosts do. Claire pulled her camera from the bag and powered it on. The LCD screen glowed in the darkness, images of Rashid, of the ruins, of a city that had been promised peace and given ashes instead. Do it, she said. Jack nodded and began setting up the uplink. Above them, the city continued its slow burn, and somewhere in the night, hunters were closing in. The satellite uplink looked like something from a decade ago, bulky, military-grade, the kind of equipment that had seen too many sandstorms. Jack positioned it near a crack in the ceiling, angling the dish toward a sliver of visible sky. Signal's weak, he muttered, adjusting the orientation. But it'll work. Slowly. Claire connected her camera to the device, her fingers moving through muscle memory. File size, 47 gigabytes. At current bandwidth, the progress bar estimated 53 minutes. Encrypting now, she said, typing in her editor's secure drop credentials. Once it starts uploading, can we cancel if we need to run? Jack shook his head. Interruption corrupts the file. You commit, you see it through. Hendricks positioned himself at the basement's entrance, rifle trained on the stairs. Then we better hope they're slow. The upload began. A thin green bar crawled across the screen. 3%, 4%. The basement fell into tense silence. Claire watched the progress bar like it was a countdown to either salvation or execution. Every percentage point felt like a small victory against the people who wanted her erased. Jack moved around the space with practiced efficiency, setting up an early warning system, fishing lines strung across the stairwell, attached to empty cans filled with pebbles. Low tech, but effective. How many times have you done this? Claire asked quietly. Exfiltrated from a hostile basement while transmitting classified data? Jack's mouth quirked. This is a first. 15%, 16%. I meant survive when you shouldn't have. Jack paused in his work, considering the question. You stop counting after the first dozen. It stops feeling like survival and starts feeling like something else. What? Borrowed time. He finished securing the tripwire. Every day is interest on a debt I should have paid 6 years ago. 23%, 24%. Outside, the city's ambient noise shifted. Engines in the distance. Voices calling in Arabic. Search patterns. Systematic sweeps. They were getting closer. Hendricks tensed. We've got movement. 2 blocks west, moving east. Jack moved to a crack in the wall and peered through. 4 technicals. Militia. not regular army. They're doing a grid search. Can they detect the transmission? Claire asked, hand instinctively covering the uplink as if that would help. Not unless they have SIG-in equipment, which they shouldn't. Jack didn't sound entirely convinced. But if they're working with someone who does, 31%, 32%. The minutes stretched like wire under tension. Claire forced herself to breathe steadily, journalist training fighting against mammalian panic. She'd been in dangerous situations before, but always with the assumption that someone, somewhere, gave a damn if she lived or died. This was different. This was being a problem that needed solving. Her phone buzzed, no signal, but the reminder alarm she'd set 3 days ago. Mom's birthday, call her. She stared at the screen. Her mother was probably in her kitchen in Portland right now, making coffee, reading the paper, wondering why her daughter chose a career that required body armor. Claire silenced the alarm. 45%, 46%. Contact! Hendrix's voice was barely a whisper. Single hostile, checking buildings on our street. Jack moved to join him at the entrance. Through the crack, Claire could see a figure moving between structures. AK-47 held loosely, more bored than alert. Search duty was tedious work, even when hunting Americans. The fighter moved past their building, then stopped, turned, looked directly at the entrance they were hiding behind. Claire's heart stopped. The fighter took a step toward them, then another. His rifle came up to a ready position. Jack's hand moved to his suppressed M4. Hendrix's finger hovered over his trigger. The fighter was 3 meters from the door. Then his radio squawked, harsh, urgent Arabic. He responded, listened, then turned and jogged back the way he came. They'd found something, somewhere else. Claire released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. 63%, 64%. How much longer? Hendrix asked. Claire checked. 28 minutes. They'll grid this whole sector in 30. Jack's jaw tightened. Then we trust the math. 79%, 80%. The explosion came from the north, close enough that dust rained from the ceiling, far enough that it wasn't meant for them. Yet. Breaching charge, Jack identified. They're hitting buildings systematically now, not searching, clearing. How many buildings between them and us? Claire asked. 7, maybe 8. Jack checked his watch. At their current pace, we've got 15 minutes before they reach this block. The upload bar crawled forward with agonizing slowness. 82%, 83%. Another explosion. Closer. Hendrix chambered around. We need a plan B. Plan B is we fight, Jack said flatly. And fighting here means dying here. Then we abort the upload and run. No. Claire surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. We're too close. Too close doesn't mean shit if you're dead. If I'm dead and this footage isn't out there, I died for nothing. She met his eyes. At least this way it means something. Another explosion. The building shook. 87%, 88%. Jack moved to the duffel bag and pulled out 3 fragmentary grenades, old M67s, the kind that had probably been cached during the surge. We'll buy time if we have to. Hendrix, you take the stairs. I'll cover the ventilation shaft on the east wall. They come from 2 directions. We collapse them into a kill zone. And her? Hendrix gestured to Claire. She finishes the upload. Then we move. 91%. 92%. The sounds of the search were crystal clear now. Boots on pavement, radio chatter, the metallic chunk of a breaching charge being placed. Claire watched the progress bar like it was the only thing keeping her alive, which, in a sense, it was. 95%, 96%. They're on our block. Hendrix's voice was tight. Jack grabbed his rifle. How many? 6 that I can see. Could be more around back. 97%. The tripwire rattled. Someone was in the building. Jack and Hendrix moved into position. Angles of fire overlapping, creating a fatal funnel. Professional, efficient, preparing to kill people they'd never met for reasons that shouldn't exist. 98%. Footsteps on the stairs. Slow, cautious. Whoever it was knew how to clear a building. 99%. Claire's hand hovered over the laptop. 1 more percent. 30 more seconds. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness at the top of the stairs. 100%. Upload complete. Done, Claire whispered. Move, Jack hissed. They grabbed gear, killed the uplink, and bolted for the tunnel entrance. A metal grate in the floor, concealed under a sheet of corrugated tin. Jack hauled it open as the footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. Flashlight beams swept the room. Hendricks fired a suppressing burst, not to hit, just to make them duck. It bought them 5 seconds. They dropped into the tunnel. Jack pulled the grate shut above them just as return fire chewed through the space they'd occupied. Then they were running through darkness, the sound of pursuit echoing behind them. The tunnel was hell. Low ceiling, uneven floor, the air thick with mold and something worse. Claire ran bent nearly double, one hand on the wall for guidance, the other clutching her camera bag like a lifeline. Behind them, shouting in Arabic, the clang of the grate being ripped open, the sounds of men dropping into the darkness. Jack led, small tactical light held low, illuminating just enough to avoid broken ground. Hendricks brought up the rear, checking their 6 every few seconds. How far? Claire gasped. Quarter click to the next junction. Jack's voice was steady, despite the pace. Then we branch. They'll have to split their forces. What if they don't follow? They'll follow. You're worth too much. The tunnel branched. Jack went right without hesitation. The passage narrowed further, forcing them to move single file. Claire's shoulder scraped against stone. Her lungs burned. She'd done field work in mountains, in deserts, but she'd never run like this. Blind, desperate, with death chasing her through the dark. Behind them, flashlights strobed the tunnels. The pursuers were closing distance. Contact rear! Hendricks stopped, took a knee, fired a controlled burst back the way they'd come. The muzzle flash lit up the tunnel like lightning. The sound in the confined space was deafening, screaming in Arabic. 1 hostile down, maybe 2, but more were coming. They ran. The tunnel opened into a wider chamber, some kind of cistern, bone dry, with multiple passages leading out like spokes on a wheel. Jack scanned the options with his light, making calculations Claire couldn't follow. This way. He moved toward the northwest passage. They'd made it 3 steps when gunfire erupted from the tunnel they just exited. Rounds sparked off stone, ricocheting wildly. Everyone dropped flat. They're not trying to hit us, Jack shouted over the noise. They're trying to pin us. Why? Her answer came from the northeast passage. More flashlights, more voices. A second team, cutting them off. They were boxed. Hendricks burned through a magazine providing cover fire. We can't stay here. Jack's eyes scanned the chamber. Stone walls, no obvious exits, nowhere to hide. Then he looked up. Above them, barely visible in the flashlight beam, was a crack in the ceiling. Natural, not man-made. Maybe 2 feet wide. There, he slung his rifle. Boost me up. That's not a plan. It's the only plan. Jack grabbed a chunk of fallen masonry and hurled it at the crack. It punched through, and suddenly dim light filtered down. A building above them, floor compromised. Hendricks cupped his hands. Jack stepped into them and reached up, fingertips finding purchase. With a grunt of effort, the older man hauled himself up and through. His face appeared in the gap. Claire, you're next. Gunfire intensified. Hendricks was down to his last magazine. Claire jumped, Jack's hand catching her wrist, pulling with surprising strength. Her shoulders scraped through the gap, then her hips. She tumbled onto a floor covered in broken tile and pigeon shit. Hendricks, move! The corporal fired his last rounds, dropped the mag, then ran and leaped. Jack caught him, pulling him up as bullets chewed through the stone where he'd been standing. They collapsed onto the floor, gasping. Below them, the sounds of pursuit echoed, angry, frustrated. Jack was already moving, checking the room, some kind of abandoned apartment, furniture long since looted, windows blown out. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they find the access point we used. Out the window, across the rooftop, down the fire escape on the other side. They ran. They stayed in the cache basement through the night. Jack took first watch, sitting by the block door with his rifle across his knees, listening to the sounds of the city hunting them. Hendricks slept fitfully, his wounded shoulder making him shift and groan. Claire couldn't sleep at all. She sat with her back against a crate marked MRE, Chicken Fajita, 2018, and pulled out her notebook. Old habit. When the world stopped making sense, she wrote, "Can't turn it off, can you?" Jack's voice was quiet, not wanting to wake Hendricks. "What?" "The need to document," he gestured at her notebook. "Even now." Claire looked down at the page. She'd been writing without thinking. Observations, timestamps, the way Hendricks' breathing changed when pain spiked through his sleep. "It's who I am." "I know." Jack stood, joints popping, and moved to sit near her. Close enough to talk quietly, far enough to respect space. "I read some of your work. Before all this, the piece you did on Mosul, the families trapped in the crossfire. You read that?" "I read everything I can get my hands on. 6 years in a war zone with no chain of command means a lot of downtime." He smiled grimly. "Your work was good, honest. You didn't try to make heroes out of anyone. There weren't any heroes in Mosul, just people trying not to die. That's most wars." Jack adjusted his plate carrier, an unconscious gesture. "The heroes are the stories we tell ourselves after." Claire studied him in the dim light of the LED lantern. "How long have you been doing this? Not just surviving, actively fighting?" "Since the 3rd month. First 2 months were just existing, hiding, licking wounds." His jaw tightened. "But then I saw a convoy get hit. IED made from a US artillery shell. Serial numbers still visible. And I realized sitting in a hole wasn't going to change anything. So you became a one-man interdiction force." "I networked with others, the burned, the forgotten, people who couldn't go home because home wouldn't have them." He pulled out a folded photograph from his vest, worn, faded. A woman, maybe 40, dark hair, kind eyes. 2 kids, boy and girl, teenagers. "My family, ex-family, they buried me, had a funeral, military honors, the whole thing." Claire looked at the photo. "Do they know that I'm alive?" Jack shook his head. "Better they don't. The people who erased me, they'd use my family as leverage. As long as I'm dead, they're safe." "That's not living, that's haunting." "Yeah," he put the photo away. "But ghosts can do things the living can't. We can go places, see things. We don't have to worry about careers or reputations or pension plans." His eyes hardened. "We can tell the truth because we've got nothing left to lose." Claire turned to a fresh page in her notebook. "Tell me, on the record, everything you know about the weapons shipments." Jack looked at her for a long moment. Then he started talking. He talked for an hour. Claire filled pages, names, dates, unit designations, contractors, the whole rotting infrastructure of a war that had been privatized and monetized until the actual mission became secondary to quarterly earnings reports. Jack's evidence was circumstantial in places, rock solid in others. Serial numbers, manifests, photographs of U.S. weapons in enemy hands, still packed in foam with English-language instruction manuals. "The first time I reported it through proper channels," Jack said, his voice distant, "my CO told me I was mistaken. The second time, I got reassigned to a different sector. The third time, we got hit by friendly fire that wasn't friendly and wasn't a mistake." "How many died?" 7. Out of a 12-man team. He stared at his hands. I should have been number 8. The round that should have killed me hit my plate carrier instead. Cracked 2 ribs, knocked me out, but I woke up in the rubble while they were doing body counts. Heard them on the radio, reporting KIA for everyone, including me. Figured if they wanted me dead that badly, I'd let them think they succeeded. And you've been fighting ever since. I've been bearing witness, same as you. He met her eyes. Difference is you've got a platform. I've just got a rifle and a grudge. Hendricks stirred, his eyes opening. You two starting a book club? Something like that, Claire said. The corporal sat up slowly, wincing. His shoulder was swollen, angry red around the bandage. How much longer until we move? Jack checked his watch. 4 hours until dawn. We move in darkness. Stay ahead of their sweeps. 2 clicks to the LZ. Hendricks did the math, factoring in his injury. We're going to be cutting it close. Story of this whole operation, Jack said. Outside, the city settled into an uneasy quiet, but they all knew it was temporary. The hunt would resume at first light. They moved at 0400, when the human body is at its lowest ebb, and even motivated hunters struggle to stay alert. Jack led them through a residential sector, or what remained of one. Homes reduced to shells, walls marked with spray paint indicating which buildings had been cleared, which still contained bodies. The pre-dawn light was the color of old bruises. Hendricks moved like a man carrying a heavy load, each step deliberate, his left hand doing all the work while his right arm hung useless. Claire stayed between the 2 men, camera bag bouncing against her hip, a constant reminder of why she was still alive when so many others weren't. They were passing through what had been a school, desks overturned, children's drawings still on the walls, faded and torn, when Jack froze. His hand came up. Stop. Everyone went still. Jack cocked his head listening. Then Claire heard it too. Voices, whispered, frightened, coming from below. A basement. Jack moved to the source, a partially collapsed stairwell, blocked by rubble but not impassable. He knelt, peered into the darkness, then whispered something in Arabic. Silence. He tried again, his accent rough but comprehensible. A voice answered, female, old, terrified. Jack turned to Claire. Civilians, family, they've been hiding down there for 3 days. No food, no water. How many? Hendricks asked. She says 5. Grandmother, daughter, 3 children. Claire felt her chest tighten. We have to help them. We have to get to the LZ, Hendricks countered. If we stop for every what? Every human being? Claire's voice rose despite herself. They're trapped. We can at least give them water. Jack said nothing. He was doing the calculus, tactical, moral, practical. Every minute they stayed exposed was a minute closer to being found. But leaving people to die of thirst when you had the means to help, that was a different kind of death. We give them what we can spare, Jack decided. 2 bottles. Directions to a safer sector. 5 minutes. That's it. They cleared enough rubble to pass down bottles and an MRE. The grandmother's hands shook as she took them, her face streaked with dust and tears. She spoke rapidly in Arabic, blessing them, thanking God, asking if the Americans had finally come to help. Jack didn't translate that part. One of the children, a boy, maybe 7, stared up at them with huge eyes. He said something to his grandmother, who nodded. What did he say? Claire asked. Jack's face was unreadable. He asked if we were angels. She told him yes. They gave directions to a neighborhood 2 clicks east, where the Red Crescent had established an aid station. Told them to wait until mid-morning, when patrols would be thinnest. The grandmother nodded, understanding, even though they all knew the odds of this family making it that far were slim. As they prepared to leave, the daughter, maybe 30, worn beyond her years, grabbed Jack's hand. She pressed something into his palm. A child's bracelet, beaded, spelling out a name. Amira. For luck, she said in broken English. So you remember. Jack closed his fist around it. I'll remember. They climbed back to street level. The 5 minutes had become 8. We need to move, Hendricks said, but his voice lacked conviction. They moved. A block away, Claire looked back. The school was just another ruin among ruins. No sign that 5 people were hiding beneath it, hoping for salvation that might never come. Do you think they'll make it? She asked. Jack didn't answer for a long moment. Then, I think they've got a better chance now than they did 8 minutes ago. That's all we can give anyone. It didn't feel like enough. It never did. The drone came an hour later, when they were crossing through an area Jack called the dead zone, a quarter-click stretch with no cover, just open ground between collapsed buildings. They were halfway across when they heard it, the high whine of rotors, small and efficient, getting closer. Down! Down! Jack grabbed them both, pulling them toward the nearest cover, a drainage culvert half filled with stagnant water that smelled like decay and chemicals. They dropped into it, the water rising to their chests. It was cold despite the morning heat, thick with algae and things Claire didn't want to identify. Hendricks gasped as the filthy water touched his wound. Don't move, Jack whispered. Drones use motion detection, thermals degraded by water. The whine grew louder. Claire could see it now, a quadcopter, commercial model modified with a camera gimbal. It flew a search pattern overhead, methodical, professional. They stood motionless in the fetid water. Claire felt things moving against her legs. Water bugs probably, or rats. Her muscles screamed from holding position. Beside her, Hendricks's face had gone gray, his jaw clenched against pain as bacteria-laden water seeped into his wound. The drone hovered directly above them. 30 seconds. 45. Then it moved on, continuing its search pattern. They waited until the sound faded completely before climbing out. Hendricks nearly fell, his legs weak, his shoulder clearly infected now, the bandage soaked through with water and pus. We need to treat that, Claire said. We need to keep moving, Hendricks replied, but his voice was thready. Jack inspected the shoulder, his face grim. Infection spreading. If we don't get antibiotics in the next 6 hours, you're looking at sepsis. Then we better make that LZ. They wrung out what they could and kept moving, but the mathematics had changed. Hendricks was slowing down, fever setting in, the countdown to critical injury ticking louder. Jack pulled out his sat phone, checked for signal. Weak, but present. I'm calling for an earlier extract, he said. You think they'll agree? Claire asked. I think they'll calculate the risk versus reward. 3 witnesses versus 1. Wounded liability versus mission success. His finger hovered over the send button. In their math, leaving Hendricks behind makes sense. You're not going to... No. Jack put the phone away. I'm just saying I understand the calculus. Doesn't mean I accept it. They moved into the ruins of what had been a market. Stalls crushed, goods long since looted, the smell of old rot still hanging in the air. Jack chose a path through the debris, checking corners, his sixth sense for danger operating on a level Claire couldn't comprehend. That's when Hendricks collapsed. Not dramatically, just a buckling of his knees, a surprise sound, and then he was down. Claire and Jack reached him together. His skin was hot to the touch, his pupils dilated. The infection had taken hold fast, accelerated by the contaminated water. Shit. Jack checked his pulse. Rapid, thready. He's going into shock. Can we carry him? 2 clicks, with hostiles searching? Jack's face was stone. Not fast enough. The unspoken option hung between them. Leave him. Complete the mission. His sacrifice buys your escape. Claire met Jack's eyes. No. Claire, I said no. Jack stared at her, then at Hendricks, then back at the path ahead. The soldier versus the mission. The man versus the ghost. All right, he said quietly. We find shelter. We treat him. We wait for dark. Then we move. That gives them 12 more hours to find us. Yeah, Jack hauled Hendricks up, draping the corporal's good arm over his shoulders. But Rangers don't leave Rangers behind, even when we should. The shelter Jack found was a partially collapsed apartment building, the kind where the top 3 floors had pancaked down but left the ground floor relatively intact. They hauled Hendricks into what had been someone's living room. Family photos still on the walls, furniture covered in plaster dust, a child's toy abandoned in the corner. Jack laid Hendricks down and immediately started working, pulling antibiotics from his cash supplies, broad-spectrum stuff past its expiration date, but better than nothing. He administered an injection, then started an IV drip with saline solution. "Where did you learn field medicine?" Claire asked, holding the IV bag. "Army training, then 6 years of necessity." Jack checked Hendricks's vitals. Pulse is stabilizing. If the antibiotics work, he'll be mobile in 6 to 8 hours. If they don't, he didn't finish the sentence. Claire's sat phone buzzed. Not a call, but a message notification. Her editor, finally getting through. She opened it. "Footage received. Holy shit, Claire, this is Pulitzer level. But be careful. Pentagon already issued denial. State Department calling it unverified claims. You need to get stateside ASAP. They're going to bury this if they can." Jack was watching her. "Good news or bad?" "Both. The footage is out. The story's live. But..." She showed him the message. Jack read it, his expression unchanging. Then he pulled out his own device, the handheld radio he used to communicate with his network. He scanned frequencies, listening to the chatter. What he heard made his face go dark. "What?" Claire asked. Jack held up a hand, listening. Arabic chatter, tactical coordination, someone giving orders in English with an American accent. Then a transmission that made his blood run cold. "Priority is containment. All 3 targets are now hostile actors. No extraction authorized. Repeat, no extraction authorized. Engage on site. Confirm." "Confirmed." Switching to hunter-killer protocol. Jack lowered the radio slowly. "They're not coming for us," he said quietly. "They're coming to kill us." Claire felt the floor drop out from under her. "What?" "The bird I called. The extraction. It was never real." Jack's hands clenched. "Reaper played me. The 90-minute window, the industrial yard, they were hurting us, getting us into an open kill zone. But you gave him the file, which means they now have the evidence and can destroy the witnesses." Jack slammed his fist against the wall. "I'm an idiot. 6 years of staying alive and I fell for the oldest trick, thinking someone gave a damn." Hendricks stirred, his eyes opening halfway. "What's happening?" "Change of plans," Jack said. "No extraction, no bird. We're on our own." "What about the journalist?" Jack looked at Claire. "They want her dead most of all. She's the one who can testify, who can verify. As long as she's alive, the story has a face." Claire's mind raced. "The industrial yard, they'll be waiting. With a kill team, probably contractor. Then we don't go to the LZ. Where do we go?" Hendricks asked, his voice clearer now, anger burning through fever. "We're surrounded. Every exit's watched. Every asset's been turned against us." Jack stood pacing, his tactical mind working through scenarios. Then he stopped. "There's one option, risky as hell, maybe suicidal." "Tell me," Claire said. "The forward operating base, FOB Sentinel, it's 8 clicks west. Under siege according to the last transmission I heard. But if we can get inside the perimeter, we're under U.S. military protection. They can't just execute us on an American base." "You said it's under siege," which means the perimeter's defended, not by contractors, by actual army. Soldiers with rules of engagement, chain of command, accountability. Jack's eyes lit with desperate hope. "We get inside that wire, we're safe, relatively. 8 clicks through hostile territory with a wounded man and half the city looking for us. Claire did the math. That's impossible. Jack smiled, and it was the smile of a man who'd been doing impossible things for 6 years. Impossible's what ghosts do best. The city sprawled below them, a patchwork of destruction lit by burning fires and the cold light of a three-quarter moon. Claire could see the search teams now, dozens of them, combing through streets like ants swarming a colony. "They've got the whole sector mobilized," Hendricks observed, checking his remaining ammunition. 2 magazines, maybe 60 rounds. Jack led them across the rooftop, stepping over gaps where the structure had collapsed. The building next door was close enough to jump, maybe 6 feet of empty air over a 3-story drop. "You've got to be kidding," Claire said. "You want to go back down there?" Jack gestured to the streets. He jumped first, landing in a roll, rifle never leaving his grip. Then Hendricks. Both men turned, arms out, ready to catch. Claire looked at the gap, at the drop, at the 2 soldiers waiting. She jumped. For a moment, she was flying. Then Hendricks's hands locked around her wrists, pulling her onto solid ground. They kept moving, across rooftops, through buildings with no walls, over rubble that shifted underfoot. The city was a vertical maze, and Jack navigated it like he'd mapped every inch in his mind. "Where are we going?" Claire asked. "Somewhere they won't look." They descended through a building that had been a hotel once, the faded sign still visible through bullet holes. Al Wafa Grand. The lobby was a graveyard of furniture. The stairs were intact enough to use. Ground floor. Jack held up a fist. Through the blown-out windows, Claire could see a street. Empty. Too empty. "Ambush?" Hendricks whispered. "Or they already passed through." Jack pulled out a small mirror, the kind soldiers use to check corners, and angled it to view the street from cover. Nothing. "We cross fast, stay low, get to the building across. 3 seconds of exposure." 3 seconds is a lifetime to a sniper. "Then don't give him a 4th. Jack moved to the window. "On 3. 1. An engine roared to life somewhere close. Headlights stabbed through the darkness. "Abort!" Jack pulled back as a technical, a pickup truck with a mounted PKM, skidded around the corner, the gunner already swinging the weapon toward the hotel. They hit the floor as the PKM opened up. Heavy caliber rounds chewed through what remained of the walls, punching fist-sized holes in concrete, shredding furniture, filling the air with debris and death. Jack returned fire, precise 3-round bursts at the gunner. The man jerked, slumped, but another fighter immediately took his place. "Back door!" Hendricks was already moving, grabbing Claire's arm, pulling her toward the rear of the building. They burst through a service entrance into an alley. No clear line of sight. Good. Bad. 2 militia fighters turning the corner, weapons rising. Hendricks was faster. 2 shots, 2 bodies. They ran deeper into the alley, away from the sound of the technical trying to maneuver into position. The urban terrain was too narrow for the vehicle, but dismounts would follow on foot. The alley opened into a small courtyard, 4 walls, 1 gate, nowhere to hide. And blocking the gate were 3 more fighters. For a frozen moment, everyone just stared. Then chaos. The firefight lasted maybe 10 seconds. In that span, Claire learned what violence actually sounded like up close. Not the Hollywood version, but the wet impacts, the screaming, the way bodies moved when bullets found them. Jack killed 2, Hendricks killed 1, but the 3rd got a shot off before dying. The round caught Hendricks in the right shoulder, spinning him, the rifle clattering from his grip. "No!" Claire lunged for him as he went down. Jack was already there, dragging the corporal behind a low wall, assessing the wound with practiced hands. "Through and through. Missed the bone. You're lucky." "Don't feel lucky," Hendricks gasped, face pale. More voices in the alley. The technical's engine revving, trying to find another approach. Jack pulled a field dressing from his kit and packed the wound with brutal efficiency. Hendricks bit down on his own glove to keep from screaming. "Can you move?" Jack asked. "Yeah." "Can you shoot?" Hendricks picked up his rifle left-handed, wincing. "Well enough." They had maybe 30 seconds before the next wave hit. Jack made a decision. "New plan. There's a safe house 2 blocks south, basement cache. Medical supplies, ammunition, comms gear. We get there, we hole up. We treat that shoulder properly." 2 blocks might as well be 2 miles, Claire said, looking at the courtyard's single exit. The gate they'd need to cross to reach the street. "Then we make it count." Jack pulled a smoke grenade from his vest. "On my mark, we move. Stay tight. Stay fast. I'll lead, you're middle. Hendricks has rear. Anyone drops, we don't stop to collect them." "Jack." "That's the rule." His eyes were hard. "You stop for the wounded, everyone dies. You keep moving, someone might make it." Before Claire could argue, he pulled the pin and threw the smoke grenade into the alley. Gray clouds billowed, thick and fast. "Now!" They burst through the gate into the street. Smoke swallowed them. Gunfire erupted, blind shooting, desperate firing into the gray. Rounds cracked past Claire's head. Her legs burned. Her lungs screamed. 20 meters. 30. The smoke thinned. They were exposed again. Jack fired at something Claire couldn't see. Hendricks stumbled, caught himself, kept moving despite the blood soaking his shoulder. A building loomed ahead, broken windows, no door, but shelter. They dove inside just as the PKM found their position, the heavy weapon tearing chunks out of the doorframe. Inside, dark, a stairwell descending. "Down!" Jack led them into the depths. The basement was exactly as he described, a cache point. Weapons racks, ammunition crates, medical supplies in waterproof containers. Someone's war plan from years ago, abandoned but not forgotten. Jack kicked the door shut behind them and shoved a steel shelf in front of it. Not permanent, but it would buy time. Hendricks collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Jack moved to him immediately, pulling out a proper trauma kit. "I need light," he said. Claire activated her camera's LED panel, bathing the scene in harsh white light. Jack cut away Hendricks' sleeve. The entry wound was clean, but the exit had done damage. Torn flesh, blood pumping with each heartbeat. "Shit," Jack muttered, pulling out combat gauze. "You're going to need surgery eventually, but for now..." He packed the wound, tight and deep. Hendricks' face went white. Claire found herself holding the corporal's good hand, squeezing. "You're okay. You're okay." "Lying doesn't help," Hendricks managed through gritted teeth. Jack finished packing, then wrapped the shoulder with an elastic bandage, tight enough to slow the bleeding without cutting off circulation. "You've got maybe 12 hours before infection becomes a serious risk. After that, you need real medical attention." 12 hours to cover 7 clicks, Hendricks tried to laugh. It came out as a cough. "Easy." Above them, the sounds of searching continued. Voices, footsteps. The militia was combing the area systematically. Jack moved to a different part of the cache and pulled out a sat phone, newer than his other equipment, batteries showing full charge. "Who are you calling?" Claire asked. "Someone who owes me a favor." Jack dialed from memory, put the phone to his ear, waited. A voice answered, male, American, cautious. "Go for Reaper." "It's Ghost 7. I need an extract. 3 packs, 1 wounded. Grid November Tango 4753. Silence on the other end. Then, "Jesus, Jack, that grid is hot as hell. Every militia in the city's looking for someone." "I know, I've got her." More silence. "The journalist?" "Yeah. And the data?" Jack glanced at Claire. "Transmitted, already in the wild." "Then she's a dead witness walking." The voice sighed. "I can get a bird, but it'll cost. And I mean cost you, personally." "Name it." "That file you've got, the one with the DOD serial numbers. I want a copy." Jack's jaw tightened. That's my insurance policy. And this is mine. You want out. I want leverage. Those are the terms. Above them, something heavy slammed against the door. They were testing the barrier. Jack closed his eyes. Deal. 90 minutes. LZ will be the industrial yard, west edge of the city. You know the one. That's 2 clicks from here. Then you better start moving. Reaper out. The line went dead. Jack stared at the sat phone, then at Hendricks, then at Claire. We've got a bird, he said quietly, but we've got to get to it. Hendricks tried to stand, using the wall for support. His legs shook but held. 2 clicks, he said. In 90 minutes, with half the city hunting us. Rangers lead the way, Jack said, the old motto feeling like both prayer and eulogy. Another slam against the door. The shelf scraped a few inches. They were out of time. The industrial yard was a graveyard of equipment left behind when the contracts ended. Rusted shipping containers, skeletal cranes, pools of standing water that reflected the moon like broken mirrors. It would have been beautiful if it wasn't a killing ground. Getting there had cost them 97 minutes. Hendricks was barely mobile, his face gray, his movements slowed by blood loss and shock. They'd avoided 2 patrols, gone through 3 more buildings, and crossed a checkpoint by sheer luck and Jack's intimate knowledge of the militia's habits. Now they waited in the shadow of a container, listening to the distant thump of rotor blades. There, Jack pointed to the north, a black shape against darker sky, no lights, flying low and fast. The helicopter, a civilian model modified for low-vis operations, descended into the center of the yard. It didn't land, just hovered 3 feet off the ground, side door open, a crew chief in night vision goggles waving them forward. Let's move! Jack grabbed Hendricks under his good arm. They ran across open ground. 50 meters. 40. The crew chief's hand came up. Wait signal. Jack froze. What? The crew chief pointed to a small, handheld device, then held up one finger. 1 passenger. What? Claire's voice was raw. The crew chief made the gesture again, emphatic, pointed to the helicopter's interior, barely enough space for pilot, crew chief, and 1 passenger. This wasn't an extraction bird. It was someone's personal ride, already loaded with equipment, fuel calculated for maximum range with minimal payload. 1 passenger. Jack's face went hard. He knew. He'd known. No, Hendricks said immediately. No, that's not. It's the deal. Jack looked at Claire. He gets you out. That was the price. Then you get on, Claire said. You've been here 6 years. You've earned. I'm not the one with the story. Jack's voice was firm. You are. That footage means nothing if you're dead. But if you live, if you testify, if you publish, he grabbed her shoulders. Then maybe this all meant something. Jack, get on the goddamn helicopter, Claire. Behind them, headlights. Multiple vehicles converging on the yard. They'd been spotted. The crew chief was waving frantically now. 30 seconds, maybe less, before the pilot had to pull up or get shot down. Both of you go, Hendricks said. He was sitting now, back against the container, rifle across his lap. I'll buy you time. Corporal. That's an order, Sergeant. Hendricks smiled, blood on his teeth. Rangers lead the way, right? Let me lead this last one. Jack stared at the young man, seeing himself from 20 years ago, seeing all the soldiers who'd made the same choice, the same sacrifice, the same doomed mathematics of war. No, Jack said quietly. You get on the bird. Sir, that's an order, Corporal. Jack grabbed Hendricks and hauled him to his feet. You've got 40, 50 years ahead of you. I've got maybe 10 good ones left, and I burned through most of them already. Do the math. The vehicles were closer. Claire could see armed figures dismounting, taking positions. This isn't, she grabbed Jack's vest. This isn't how this ends. Yeah, it is. Jack smiled, and for the first time she saw peace in his eyes. I've been dead for 6 years. I just kept moving. But this is a good death. This means something. He pushed Hendricks toward the helicopter. The crew chief grabbed the corporal, pulling him inside. Jack turned to Claire. Tell the story, all of it. Don't let them bury this. Jack, promise me. Tears cut tracks through the dust on her face. I promise. He nodded once, then shoved her toward the helicopter. She stumbled, caught herself. The crew chief's hand locked around her wrist. Jack was already moving, running toward the nearest shipping container, rifle coming up, drawing fire away from the LZ. The helicopter lifted. Below, Jack reached the container and took a knee, firing controlled bursts at the advancing militia. Buying seconds, buying lives. Claire watched him through the open door, the distance growing. She raised her camera, instinct overriding grief, and filmed. Jack glanced up once, saw her filming, and smiled. Then he turned back to the fight. The last thing she saw before the helicopter banked hard and the yard disappeared behind them was muzzle flash. Jack's rifle, still firing, still fighting, still making them pay for every inch. Then darkness. By nightfall, Hendricks could stand. The antibiotics had worked, not perfectly, but enough. His fever had broken, his eyes were clear, and he could hold his rifle again. The shoulder was still a mess, but pain was manageable with the tramadol Jack had pulled from the cache. 8 clicks, Hendricks said, studying Jack's hand-drawn map. Through sectors we know are hot, past checkpoints, into an active siege. That's the plan, Jack confirmed. It's a terrible plan. You got a better one? Hendricks stared at the map, then shook his head. No, but that doesn't make this one good. Claire had been quiet, processing everything. The betrayal, the kill order, the fact that the stories she'd transmitted might be the last thing she ever did. Now she looked up from her notebook. What happens when we get to FOB Sentinel, assuming we make it? We request sanctuary. Formally, Jack tapped the map. Once we're inside U.S. military jurisdiction, they can't just black bag us. There are procedures, documentation, people who'll ask questions if 3 Americans disappear from an active FOB. You think procedure will stop them? No, but it'll slow them down. Give us time to get lawyers involved, media attention, congressional oversight. Jack's jaw set. They operated in the shadows because no one was looking. You changed that. Now we use the light as a weapon. Hendricks checked his rifle. Partial disassembly, function check, reassembly, muscle memory. What's the defenses look like at Sentinel? Last I heard, they'd pulled back to a tighter perimeter. Walls, wire, watchtowers. Standard FOB layout. The siege forces are keeping them bottled up, but not directly assaulting. Standoff. So we need to break through a siege line, cross no man's land, and convince jumpy sentries not to shoot us. Essentially. Like I said, terrible plan. Hendricks finished his function check. When do we leave? 0200, darkest part of the night. Move fast, stay quiet, get across the danger areas before dawn. Claire packed her gear, camera, spare batteries, notebook, the few items that defined her professional life. Everything else was weight. She'd already dumped her satellite phone SIM card and battery separately, standard practice for hostile environments. You should know, she said to Jack, if I don't make it, my editor has instructions. The raw footage, your testimony, all of it gets published posthumously. They can kill me, but they can't stop the story now. Jack nodded slowly. Good, that's good. Is it? She met his eyes. People are going to die because of what I reported. Not just us. When this goes public, there will be investigations, arrests, careers destroyed, lives ruined. Lives that were built on blood money, Jack said quietly, on weapons that killed civilians, on a war that was turned into a business model. You think those lives deserve protection? I think I'm a journalist, not a judge. Then report, let others judge. Jack stood, checking his own gear. But don't doubt what you did. You saw corruption and you exposed it. That's not just journalism, that's moral courage. Claire wanted to believe that, but moral courage felt a lot like playing God with other people's lives. Hendricks interrupted her thoughts. We should eat. MREs. Hydrate. Get what rest we can. Next 6 hours are going to be hell. They ate in silence. Chicken fajita for Jack, beef stew for Hendricks, vegetarian pasta for Claire. The food tasted like cardboard and chemicals, but it was calories, fuel for the machine. At 01:45, Jack stood. Time. They moved to the door. Outside, the city was quiet, too quiet. They're out there, Jack said, waiting, watching, but they don't know where we are exactly. That's our edge. How long does that edge last? Claire asked. Until they see us. Jack smiled grimly. Then it's a race. They stepped into the darkness. The first 2 clicks were a study in controlled paranoia. Every shadow could be a threat. Every sound required investigation. Jack led them through routes he'd mapped over years. Paths that avoided major arteries, used dead ground, exploited gaps in patrol patterns. But the city had changed. The siege had militarized everything. Checkpoints that hadn't existed last week now bristled with militia fighters. Streets that had been empty now crawled with patrols. They were crossing through a cemetery, old headstones, Islamic script, some graves fresh from recent fighting, when the first patrol passed within 50 meters. 5 fighters, AK-47s, moving with purpose toward the city center. Jack froze them all behind a mausoleum. Waiting, breathing shallow. The patrol passed. They kept moving. Kilometer 3 brought them to a canal, dry concrete channel 15 feet deep that cut east-west through the sector. They dropped into it, using the depth for concealment, moving fast along the bottom. That's when they heard the vehicles. Multiple engines. Close. Getting closer. Technical convoy, Jack identified. At least 3 vehicles. They pressed against the canal wall as headlights swept overhead. The trucks passed slowly, scanning, hunting. One of the trucks stopped, directly above them. Claire's heart hammered. Hendricks' finger moved to his trigger. Jack's hand went to a grenade on his vest. Voices in Arabic. Radio chatter. Someone was checking coordinates, calling in a position. Then an engine started and the truck moved on. They waited 5 full minutes before moving again. They're tightening the net, Jack said. Someone knows we didn't go to the industrial yard. They're searching everywhere. Can we still make it? Claire asked. Jack checked his watch. If we maintain pace and don't hit more delays, we reach the siege line by 0430, 30 minutes before dawn. That's cutting it close. And if we're delayed, then we're caught in the open when the sun comes up, and we die. They climbed out of the canal and kept moving. Kilometer 5. They were moving through an industrial area, warehouses, loading docks, the rusted hulks of trucks that would never run again. Jack chose a path between 2 warehouses, a narrow alley that offered concealment and a clear line of sight. They were halfway through when the trap sprung. Spotlight from above, harsh white light that turned night into day. Claire's vision whited out. She heard Jack shout, heard gunfire, felt Hendricks grab her and pull her behind a concrete barrier. The firing was disciplined, controlled. Not militia, these were professionals. Contractors, Jack yelled, returning fire. They found us. Rounds sparked off concrete. Claire stayed flat, covering her head, useless. This wasn't her world. She reported on violence. She didn't survive it. Hendricks was firing one-handed, his wounded shoulder making his aim less precise, but still effective. We're pinned. They've got high ground. Jack was already moving, pulling another smoke grenade. He threw it between them and the spotlight. Gray clouds billowed. When I say go, we run for that warehouse on the left. 40 meters. Don't stop. What about you? Claire asked. I'm the distraction. Jack checked his rifle. Go! He broke from cover, firing, drawing the contractor's attention. The spotlight swung to follow him. Now! Hendricks grabbed Claire and they ran. 40 meters felt like 40 miles. Bullets chewed through the smoke around them. Claire's legs pumped, her camera bag slamming against her back, her lungs screaming. They hit the warehouse door, locked. Hendricks shot the lock, kicked it open. They tumbled inside. Behind them, Jack was still firing, moving, a ghost in the smoke. Then an explosion, flashbang, not lethal but disorienting. The firing stopped. "Jack!" Claire screamed. The smoke cleared. Jack was down. "No!" Claire started toward him. Hendricks grabbed her. "He's drawing them away from us. If you go back, you waste his sacrifice." "He's not dead. Look." Through the warehouse's broken windows, Claire could see Jack moving, slowly crawling, but alive. He'd taken hits, his leg, maybe his side, but he was still fighting. He pulled himself behind a shipping container. The contractors were repositioning, moving to finish him. Hendricks pulled Claire deeper into the warehouse. "We have to keep moving. We can't leave him." "We don't have a choice." Hendricks' voice cracked. "He made his play. We honor it by surviving." Outside, more gunfire. Jack's rifle, still in the fight. Claire felt something break inside her. The journalist, the observer, the person who documented tragedy but never intervened. That person died in this moment. "Give me your sidearm," she said. Hendricks stared at her. "What?" "Your pistol, give it to me." "You're not trained." "I'm not leaving him." Her voice was steel. "You can come with me or get to the FOB alone, but I'm not leaving him." Hendricks looked at her for a long moment, saw something in her eyes that made him nod. "All right." He handed her his M9. 15 rounds, point and shoot, recoil's manageable. Don't aim for headshots, center mass. Claire took the pistol. It was heavier than she expected. "One more thing," Hendricks said. He pulled a flare gun from his vest. "When I fire this, it'll light up the whole area. 3 seconds of visibility. You use those 3 seconds to get to Jack. I'll cover." "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you," he smiled. "Rangers lead the way, right?" They moved to the back of the warehouse, circling around to where Jack had taken cover. The contractors were focused on his position, 4 men moving with tactical precision. Hendricks aimed the flare gun skyward. "Ready?" Claire nodded. He fired. The flare arced into the sky and burst, brilliant magnesium white that turned night into noon. For 3 seconds, every shadow disappeared. Claire ran. The contractors spun, surprised. Hendricks opened fire, dropping one, wounding another. Claire reached Jack's position. He was pale, blood soaking his left side and leg, but his eyes were clear. "What the hell are you doing?" he gasped. "Being stupid." She grabbed him under his good arm. "Can you walk?" "Not well." "Then lean on me." They moved together, shuffling, stumbling, too slow. Behind them, the remaining contractors recovered from surprise and began firing. Hendricks laid down covering fire, burning through his last magazine. They made it to a gap in the fence, probably cut by looters weeks ago. They squeezed through just as rounds sparked off metal where they'd been standing. "Keep moving!" Hendricks was retreating, firing, covering their escape. They stumbled into a rubble field, broken concrete, twisted rebar, enough terrain features to break line of sight. Behind them, shouting, the contractors regrouping. "How far to Sentinel?" Claire gasped, Jack's weight heavy on her shoulder. "1 click, maybe less." Jack's voice was weak. "But we'll never make it like this." "We'll make it." "Claire, we'll make it." Dawn was breaking, that terrible gray light that made everything visible but nothing clear. They could see FOB Sentinel now, maybe 800 meters ahead. The walls, the wire, the guard towers, between them and safety. A kill zone, open ground, no cover. And behind them, the contractors closing in. Hendricks had maybe 10 rounds left. Jack couldn't fight, Claire had a pistol she barely knew how to use. "We're not going to make it across that," Hendricks said flatly. "Then we call for help." Jack pulled out his sat phone, cracked screen, low battery, but functional. He dialed the FOB's emergency frequency. "FOB Sentinel, this is Ghost 7, requesting immediate assistance. 3 American civilians under fire, approaching from the east, 800 meters from your perimeter. Request suppressing fire and emergency extract." Static. "FOB Sentinel, do you copy?" More static. Then a voice, young, uncertain. "Ghost 7, Sentinel acknowledges. Stand by for verification." "We don't have time for verification. We're under fire." "Sir, I need authentication codes." Gunfire erupted behind them. The contractors had caught up. Hendricks returned fire. 5 rounds left. 4. 3. "Ghost 7, we have visual on your position. Multiple hostiles pursuing. But without proper authentication, I cannot authorize fire support." Jack's face went hard. He pulled the beaded bracelet from his pocket, the one the woman had given him. "A mirror," he said to himself. Then into the phone. "Authentication Zulu 7 Charlie Romeo. Former 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. Sergeant Jack Harlan, serial number 847-22-9654. Declared KIA November 2019. And I am ordering you to provide covering fire before 3 Americans die in front of your goddamn gates." Silence on the radio. Then, "Harlan? Jack Harlan?" "Yeah." "Holy shit, sir, we thought you were dead." "I got better. Now light them up." The tower-mounted M240 opened fire. Heavy machine gun, .762 rounds, devastating. The contractors scattered, seeking cover. Their advance halted. "Move!" Jack pushed Claire. "Before they realize we're not bulletproof." They ran, Claire half carrying Jack, Hendricks providing rear security, crossing that terrible open ground while the M240 hammered suppressing fire over their heads. 400 meters, 300, 200. The contractors returned fire, engaging the tower. Rounds sparked off the tower's armor plating. 100 meters. The FOB's gate was opening, soldiers in full kit pouring out, providing a security cordon, laying down fire. 50 meters. Jack stumbled. Claire caught him, kept him moving. 20 meters. Hands reached out. Soldiers, real U.S. Army, grabbing them, pulling them through the gate into safety. The gate slammed shut. They were inside. The FOB's aid station smelled like disinfectant and blood. Combat medics worked on Jack and Hendricks, while Claire sat on a cot, wrapped in a shock blanket, still holding the M9 no one had thought to take from her. A captain appeared, mid-30s, Ranger tab, skeptical eyes. "Ms. Morgan?" "Captain Rick Vasquez, FOB Sentinel Commander. I need to understand what the hell just happened." Claire looked up at him. "What happened is someone in your chain of command tried to have us killed." "That's a serious accusation." "It's a documented fact." She pulled out her camera, miraculously intact, and showed him. "This footage shows U.S. weapons being funneled to militia forces. Sergeant Harlan witnessed it, reported it, got hit with friendly fire for his trouble. When I tried to report it, they sent contractors to silence us." Vasquez watched the footage, his face hardening. "Who gave the order?" "I don't know, but it came from somewhere up the chain. High enough to mobilize assets, issue kill orders, bury evidence." "Jesus Christ." Vasquez ran a hand through his hair. "You understand I have to report this. Up my chain." "The same chain that's compromised?" "I have to follow procedure." "Procedure is what got us here, Captain." Claire stood, exhausted, furious. "I'm a journalist. I have rights. I'm requesting immediate transport to the embassy, a military lawyer, and protective custody. Not requests, demands." Vasquez studied her. "You've got steel, I'll give you that. I've got a story, one that's already been published. You can help me testify, or you can try to cover it up and become part of the problem." The captain thought for a moment, then nodded. "I'll make the calls, but you stay here until I can guarantee your safety. Understood?" "Understood." He left. Claire sat back down and finally let herself shake. 3 days later, Claire stood in front of a conference room at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Inside were congressional staffers, military investigators, State Department lawyers, and a video link to Washington. Her testimony took 4 hours. She presented everything: Jack's documentation, her footage, the timeline of events, the kill order Jack had intercepted. She named names where she could, identified patterns where she couldn't. When she finished, the lead investigator, a colonel with 30 years in and eyes like flint, leaned back in his chair. "Ms. Morgan, if even half of what you're alleging is true, this is the biggest military corruption scandal since Halliburton. Do you understand the implications?" "I understand that weapons meant to protect American soldiers were sold to the people killing them. I understand that when someone tried to report it, he was erased. I understand that journalism sometimes means making powerful people angry. It also means painting a target on your back." "I'm aware." Claire pulled out her notebook, the same one she'd carried through the entire nightmare. "But I'm also aware that silence is complicity, and I'm done being silent." The colonel nodded slowly. "You'll need protection, probably for a long time." "I know. And you'll make enemies, powerful ones. Already have." He almost smiled. "Then I think you'll do fine, Ms. Morgan." Claire found Jack in a hospital room at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. They'd medevaced him 2 days after the fob extraction: emergency surgery, blood transfusions, infection control. He was awake when she entered, staring at the ceiling. "Hey," she said. "Hey yourself." He turned his head, managed a smile. "You made it." "We made it." "Yeah." He looked at his hands, IV lines, monitors, the physical proof of survival. "They're saying I'll walk again, maybe even run, but combat's over." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I've been fighting for 6 years. Maybe it's time I tried living instead." He met her eyes. "Your testimony, it's all over the news. Congress is screaming for hearings. Pentagon's in damage control." "Good. You know they'll never forgive you for this." "I know. And you're okay with that?" Claire thought about it, about the grandmother in the basement, about Hendricks, who'd survived and was recovering down the hall, about all the people who died in a war that had been turned into a profit center. "I'm okay with telling the truth," she said. "The rest is their problem." Jack smiled, real this time, reaching his eyes. "You're going to be a hell of a journalist, Claire Morgan. I learned from a hell of a source." She pulled out the beaded bracelet, a mirror, that Jack had dropped during the extraction. "You dropped this." He took it, closed his fist around it. "I promised I'd remember." "And you did." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, then Claire stood. "I have to go. Editor wants a full feature. Book deals on the table. Congressional testimony next week." "Big-time journalist now." "Just doing my job." She paused at the door. "Jack, thank you. For everything. Thank you for not giving up. On the story, on me, on any of it. Rangers lead the way, right?" He laughed, real, full, alive. "Yeah, we do." 6 months later, Claire stood in her apartment in Washington, D.C., watching the news coverage of the Senate hearings. 3 generals had resigned. 7 contractors were under indictment. The weapons trafficking network had been dismantled. Her Pulitzer sat on the shelf, recognition for courage in investigative journalism under extreme conditions. But it was the other item on her desk that mattered more. A photo, her, Jack, and Hendricks, taken at Landstuhl before they'd all been sent stateside. 3 people who shouldn't have survived. Who did? Her phone buzzed. Text from Jack. "Watching the hearings, They're finally telling the truth. Weird feeling. She typed back, "Get used to it. This is just the beginning." Another text from Hendricks. "Cleared for active duty. Back to the regiment next month. Coffee before I ship?" Claire smiled and replied, "Absolutely. Rangers don't leave Rangers behind." She turned back to the window. The DC skyline glittered in the twilight. Power, politics, the machinery of government grinding forward. Somewhere in that machinery, people were angry at her. Powerful people. Dangerous people. But she'd learned something in that city of ruins, running through darkness with a ghost and a corporal. Truth was a weapon, and she knew how to wield it. Her laptop chimed. New email from her editor. "Ready for the next assignment?" Claire Morgan smiled and started typing.